All right, everyone, how you doing? This is going to be a special update. There's a lot going on in the world right now, specifically in Ukraine compared to the rest of the year. There have been some relatively large changes to the front line in the last week. Um, Honestly, I think they are a big indicator of things to come. I don't think there's really any other way to look at it. So we are going to get into that. But we are also going to pair this up with a Gaza update. Also, some very big news there. Along with that, some geopolitical points going on in the Middle East. And we are going to talk about China. I apologize. This update is going to be a little different. I'm actually pretty tired too, so there's not going to be a whole lot of enthusiasm here. Got to get my eggnog. All right. So the reason I am doing the update like this is I will be hitting the road on Friday and driving all weekend, so I'm not going to really have time to do anything this weekend. So we're just going to do it right now. Based on how many big updates have come out. If some of you might have noticed, there's actually a bit more editing in my videos lately. I've actually hired an editor. I think he's doing a pretty good job, honestly. I don't know if he wants to be named, so I'm just going to say shout out editor guy. Feel free to give him some feedback in the comments. That should be very helpful to what he does. Constructive criticism, but yeah, just give him feedback. Let him know what he's doing good. Let him know what you want to see. So I did make this decision to hire someone because I would like to invest in this channel for the future. I think we really might have something here, honestly, and it's definitely a great time to have diverse opinions circulating during these troubling global times. So between editing and some software, more money is actually going into the channel at the moment than is coming out of it, which is quite all right. Honestly, it is definitely worth the investment. So, in light of all that, I would ask that you just consider hitting the like and subscribe buttons. That would help tremendously in getting where we need to be. There are also some donation options in the description, which several people are already doing. So, thank you for that. I don't know if the PayPal people want to be called out. But here's a shout out to all of the Super Chat folks. So, those of you guys on Super Chat, let's give you a quick shout out. There you are. Look at all those nice people. Good job. Thank you for donating to the channel. All right. Let's get back to the other stuff. Oh, the only other thing I want to say on that note, I think maybe in the future, if you guys do decide to donate on PayPal, attach a message if you want to remain anonymous. That way I can give you some credit where it's due without worrying about breaching people's privacy. There's a couple of people that have given some sizable donations on PayPal. I want to give you a shout out, but I don't know if you want to be named or not. So just in the future, if anyone does decide to do that, which this is, of course, all optional, just let me know if you want to remain anonymous. All right. So, real quick note actually on podcast. So there actually will be 2 podcasts coming out this weekend. I will stagger them so you have something to watch, and hopefully my editor can get out a couple shorts of the main highlights from this video here, so some of you can get basically the short version of some of the updates we're going to go over. I think you guys will actually like the guests that I have coming up. A lot of you should be familiar with them by now. There are certainly prominent personalities in the geopolitics community. I haven't actually met with them yet. I was supposed to meet with, I am supposed to meet with both of them tomorrow. So the first guest, Sean, was a British fighter pilot that spent a lot of time on Sky News. He definitely has a pro-Western perspective, but overall, I think he had a pretty bleak outlook for Ukraine. Of the two guests I'm having tomorrow, one is certifiably neutral in his reporting, and the other, I guess, leans more to the anti-support for Ukraine side, to put a loose, very loose label on it. He can certainly more accurately lay out his position for us. So sorry if I'm assigning a label. It's not really my intent. So for the first 3 podcasts, that will give us a good spread of perspective, left, right, and center, not politically, but you get what I'm saying, of the particular issue, which is what I'm hoping to do. All right, so we're going to go ahead and jump into the updates for Ukraine. And we are going to start with the Avdiivka area. So there's actually quite a bit going on here since we last spoke. But the Russians have began pushing north of Krasnogorivka, and I think I can actually get these assets back on here. Okay, so town of Krasnogorivka here, the Russians are pushing up the rail line. There's actually a small little old rail station right here at this corner that they managed to capture. It's not anything more than just ruins, or basically a foundation, but once upon a time it was some kind of station or stop for the rail line here. And they've also began moving north through this territory towards the northern rail line that goes up in the direction of Novo Kalinove. So some reports are actually already saying that the Russians have reached this rail line. This information comes from one of the most accurate sources, Suryak Maps. He has not disclosed that yet. And, like I've said many times, I trust him more than I do a lot of these other, Ukrainian and Russian sources. Like, they typically over or underestimate what's going on in the field. But I do expect that this chunk of territory right here will probably soon fall into Russian hands. So any Ukrainian troops still remaining in that area probably going to get pushed out pretty easily if Ukraine doesn't manage to push the Russians back out of this corner here. So to the south of the landfill mound, the Russians have actually moved in and captured this industrial area right here. It's some kind of not a compressor station, but it looks to be like maybe a water filtration plant, or possibly a waste disposal plant when it comes to wastewater. Either way, it appears the Russian army has moved in, captured those positions, and they have expanded their control directly to in between the landfill mound and the small settlement of Kamyanka. So capturing fields in this area. Apparently there are clashes going on for these dachas, this small little village area right here in between everything. That was the last word that we got on the situation there. Don't really know much else, but I expect the Russians will be limited in how far they can push in the direction of the steel plant. So, wherever there's hills blocking the view from the steel plant, the Russians are going to be able to advance, especially since they'll have the cover of the landfill mound, which, in this area, it appears like there is a bit of, I guess you would say, like, height difference that could prevent spotting, limit Ukrainian artillery in this area. So very possible Russia manages to cap this off, But in terms of actually moving into Avdiivka proper from this area, I imagine that the steel plant is going to be the biggest obstacle for the Russians. But the Russians are actually making moves to mitigate that. So the other bit of big news we have from Avdiivka is the Ukrainians have actually retreated from Stepove in the north, which is the small settlement here. We've several times heard that the Russians have captured this, but nothing definitive yet. And we still haven't heard that the Russians have actually physically captured it today. That's why I don't have it shaded in yellow here. But we have heard that the Ukrainians have withdrawn from the town, meaning that, the situation's gotten bad enough they can no longer hold it, probably due to this expansion of the lines to the north. Nevertheless, the Russians are going to be able to move in, probably capturing the area I've highlighted here. And then after that, if the Ukrainians don't do anything about what's going on here, the Russians could probably easily use, attack on the flanks and expand out into this area right here, putting pretty severe pressure on the northern parts of Avdiivka. You start to see that more when you zoom out. So just real quick before we move on to Bakhmut, I do want to bring up the previous Frontline reports so you guys can see all the different gains. And let's go ahead and get these assets out of here because they're kind of in the way. So these are more or less roughly the areas that the Russians have gained, lost, failed to get control over, some areas that the Ukrainians have captured, etc. You start to see, over the last 4 or 5 weeks, pretty significant expansion on the flanks. I mean, this is severe. The situation has been severely degraded from what it was before. I mean, you were looking at the Russians sitting back here on this line, down at the south, and up here on this line in the north, not even holding the landfill. So, big changes in Avdiivka since this battle began. All right, so I actually do think there is a correction from yesterday. I had marked that this industrial area had fallen into Russian hands. Partially true. Turns out that this factory building here, along with some of these trenches that the Ukrainians have sat in since 2014, I'd add, and then a couple buildings here slightly to the northeast of that have actually fallen in. So, the gains that I had originally marked were far too generous. So I made some reductions to that. All right. So real quick to talk about Bakhmut. And it's really important here what's going on in the context of, and let me see here. I can probably fix the screen some here, make it a little bigger. There we go. In the context of Avdiivka, it appears like Ukraine is really struggling at the moment when it comes to manpower. And I think, that's multifaceted. First off, you have the summer offensives, lost a lot of troops, who knows the actual numbers, but whatever the numbers of KIA are, the wounded are probably many times more than that. So significant loss in combat power for the Ukrainians after the summer. And then significant pressure being placed over the last month or two by the Russians appears to mean that the Ukrainians are very, very low on resources right now, which also kind of speaks to what's going on in America in terms of trying to pass aid for Ukraine. Very surprisingly, the Democrats in the Senate actually blocked a Israeli aid bill, which was popular. Money for Israel is popular on all sides of American politics, if you don't know that already. But, kind of somewhat political suicide for the Democrats to block that. Maybe not amongst their voter base, because obviously the liberal voter base in America is far more pro-Palestine. but certainly amongst their donors, like a lot of the donor class, and there's a lot of Jewish Israeli groups that give a lot of money to put the Democrats into office. So we'll see what goes on with that there. But the fact that that bill was blocked, I think, has more to do with the lack of Ukraine funding than it had anything to do with the presence of the Israel funding, obviously. And it seems like it might be kind of a sign that of the despair of the situation. So yesterday, or I guess 2 days ago, when we did the last report, and I'm going to bring up, this is all of the previous updates over the last couple of weeks since I started posting again. You can see the Ukrainians continued making some progress in Klashivka at the beginning, but since have been rolled back in a big way in several areas. With the Russians now trying to push back into Klashivka, I don't know if the Ukrainians plan on withdrawing from this area, but the Ukrainians did withdraw from these areas marked here, which is directly, this is now oriented to north-south, but this is directly northwest of Bakhmut. So you could see a lot of these places where Ukraine was making counterattacks while the Battle of Bakhmut was still ongoing. Almost all of them they've lost, and very recently over the last couple of weeks. So, the largest being this chunk of land right here, actually in the center, is about 4 square kilometers. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, like for the size of Ukraine, it's not much, but as far as the movements we see on a weekly basis, it's quite a big chunk of land comparatively. So, all right. My point here is basically that we could start to see more and more Russian gains like this in and around Bakhmut, in and around Avdiivka, and several other locations across the front. So real quick, just to go through some general frontline updates, some other things going on. There is a lot of activity going on in this region. As you can see, these are all the previous frontline reports that we have marked here. Land kind of going back and forth between the Russians and the Ukrainians. There's a battle for this corner right here. And I think, actually, if we go to layers, go to, let's go to everything. I'm pretty sure there's actually, a rail line that runs close by here. But heavy contested ground directly to the east of Kupiansk. And then finally, I think in terms of actual frontline updates, we don't have anything else. There is a good bit of fighting going on along the Dnieper River and Krimki, which I really need to probably, that will be a big question for both podcast guests tomorrow. What they think of this trans Dnieper assault. I just really don't see the sense in it, to be completely honest with you. I mean, you're just I can see how Ukraine could perhaps easily hold on to the islands in the center of the floodplain, because the Russians can't easily get any kind of logistics onto those islands either. So it's basically, which side can launch more boats at that point, which maybe the Russians don't even have any interest in that. Who knows? But the Ukrainians are clearly using, larger boats, landing craft, things like that. Tanks, APCs that have amphibious capabilities, which quite a few actually do, even these older Soviet models and stuff. Some of that crap floats. Some of it just goes underwater and comes back up. But I think, probably not on this river for, that kind of stuff. But, the Russians are counterattacking in this area. But as of, today, they've really failed to push Ukraine out of the town. All right. So some interesting stuff about the Black Fleet. And I have a bigger point here with this. I've been talking about this on Twitter and, in several. Let's see here. I don't know why. Let's refresh that page. I don't know where my big long post went. There it is. Wasn't showing up. All right, let's get this screen on here. All right, so I had pointed out to everyone that the Russian Navy specifically the Black Sea Fleet, has been suffering a lot more severely than people are bringing attention to, especially on the neutral reporting of things. Of course, the pro-Ukrainian side's always going to say that if they destroy a dinghy, they're going to say, oh, we've sunk half the fleet. But in reality, like, the situation is getting kind of critical for the Black Sea Fleet, and it's really two-factored. It's these Storm Shadow cruise missiles supplied by the UK are actually doing quite a bit of damage. First, you have the missile cruiser Escald, which was hit by several missiles in dry dock. It was actually pretty close to being completed and being put to sea. This is a brand new ship. Keep that in mind. This is a brand new ship. It's in the port of Kerch. On top, and this happened, first week of November, so very recently. If you haven't, I've talked about this several times if you haven't been paying attention. On top of that, a report that I had actually missed on Telegram. I don't know what I was doing that day, but I don't know how I missed it. But along with the attack on the landing craft, the Rostov-on-Don, which is a diesel submarine. I think all Russian submarines in the Black Sea are diesel powered, which, it's not saying anything. It's a small, basically, like, inland sea. You don't really need nuclear power subs in the Black Sea. But anyways, struck by missiles, drones, don't really know. Pretty serious damage done to the submarine. Of course, you can see it's actually in dry dock right now. It's this particular picture. It's hard to see because it's a little blurry, but I've seen not blurred out pictures where it's actually in the dry dock. But you can bet that if this ship isn't completely destroyed, it's going to be decommissioned for quite some time. And if this ship, isn't damaged beyond repair, it's going to be out of commission for some time. All these ships, by the way, the British Ministry of Defense is saying they're all damaged beyond economic repair, which I don't exactly buy that, but that's some pretty serious. You're talking about some gaping holes in the side of this thing. Project 775 Rapucha class. Oh, by the way, the submarine was on 13th of September, so about a month ago. Project 775 Rapucha class landing ship Minsk, after a Ukrainian attack in early November. Missile strikes. Can't really get a good view of it here, but it's definitely got some damage to it. There's a couple other photos of it from different angles that I couldn't find for this post here in time. This is just a quick post I threw together. Same attack early in November, first week in November. Another 775 Rapucha class landing ship, Olenigorsky Gornyak. Pretty severe list. Obviously hit by a naval drone or a missile or something. pretty sure this boat was salvaged. I mean, it looks pretty good that they got it in the harbor, and you're looking at like calm waters. They can pretty easily tow that back to port. But nevertheless, hull damage pretty significant. Going to be out for a little bit of time. Last year, another Saratov Project 1171 landing ship was on fire at the port of Berdyansk. A little bit confusion about which ship might actually been on fire there. And of course, you have the Moskva, which sank in April of last year. So my point with all of this is if you remove all of the small like patrol boats and all these various little things from the Russian Black Sea fleet, the total number of vessels goes from somewhere north of 70 down to 38 large surface combatants, right? So large ships meaning missile corvettes, frigates, cruisers, minesweepers, landing ships, and submarines. So it's about 38 ships in total. That's including the Moskva. So already we're down to 37. So 6 of 38 is actually over 15% of the large surface combatant fleet has been severely damaged. And that's not including these, there is a number of these smaller patrol boats and stuff that have been damaged. I didn't include in this post. They're not even worth talking about, really. But, it is worth talking about the loss or the immediate loss of the landing ships, the loss of the use of those, because that, potentially could harm Russian logistics in and around Crimea and the Black Sea, depending on, the status of the Crimean bridge, whether it's running or whether it's fully operational, under repair, new missile strikes, whatever. The status of the rail lines, moving the new rail line that's been built from Mariupol to Melitopol. Just logistics in general. It's pretty quick to move, say, a bunch of ammunition or a couple tanks from Sevastopol to Skadovsk, which is actually, let's see, just real quick, I'll show you guys where that is. This port right here, in the southern Kherson region. So, you have Sevastopol, Skadovsk. So that's probably, if there was an emergency going on with this Dnieper River crossing, the fastest way to get reinforcements there would be, troops stationed in Sevastopol. So, losing the landing ships temporarily, however long they're going to be decommissioned for, can have some battlefield effects. But really, this is not the main issue here. Even really at this point, outside of the Moskva, losing the missile corvette and the submarine, both launch missiles, is going to affect Russia's capacity to strike at Ukrainian ports and launch deep missile strikes inside of Ukraine somewhat. I mean, you have 2 less vessels. That's, probably, 8 to 12 less missiles they can fire at a time, depending on what these, ships can do. So, marginal effect there, or potentially some bigger effects there. Still not even really what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at here is Ukraine has demonstrated a clear capability to use both naval drones, air drones, and cruise missiles to go after ships in the Black Sea. And it's only a matter of time, potentially, before Ukraine starts going after the Russian shipping lanes where Russia's exporting its oil. That's really the big problem here. Is, who's to say that Ukraine says, all right, we're done embarrassing the Black Sea fleet. We're going after some oil tankers. We're going after the pocketbook of the Russians. So I think that's really the main threat that could come of this naval drone thing if it doesn't stop. And honestly, I'm surprised it hasn't happened already, because naval drones have been spotted near Novorossiysk, previously, earlier in the year. they made it that far. So kind of a big deal. As soon as that starts happening and Russia starts, say if a ship gets hit or a ship gets lost, there's a big thing in terms of like insurance here, which is actually, let's get back to Twitter real quick. All right. I believe something. Oh yeah, Peter Zion. Some people in the comments really don't like him. Smart guy though. He knows what he's talking about here. Basically, he's commenting on this post here, and this is essentially a suggestion on what Ukraine should do in terms of their grain shipments. Like the port of Odessa's blockade, so Ukraine can't make any money shipping grain in and out of the country. But if you were to move on this yellow dotted line here along the coast to get out of the Bosphorus, and then the Dardanelles further to the south, you would probably stay away from the wrath of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, because the Russian Black Sea Fleet aren't going to patrol that close to Ukraine. And when they are that close, or when their ships are that close to Ukraine, they can get some cover, some air cover, whether it be from helicopters or air defenses shooting down incoming Russian missiles that might be targeting these ships and whatnot. So on the face of it, not a terrible idea, but I think, and Peter actually goes pretty deep into this insurance and sovereign indemnity in some of his books. And basically what he's talking about here is, if you can imagine like an oil tanker or a grain ship, or even a cargo ship for that matter, is a multi-million, tens of millions of dollars is what that ship costs, and a company owns that ship, or the captain owns that ship, whatever. And when he picks up cargo, he's essentially buying that cargo at one place and then selling it at the place he's taking it to. It's like, like if he doesn't make it to, if the captain doesn't make it to the destination with the cargo, he's responsible for it, right? Same thing with truck drivers, like Teamsters or whatnot. So that's where the insurance comes in, because it doesn't happen very often. So like insurance companies, big time insurance companies, like those, particularly in London, will insure shipping to make sure that they soothe the feathers of captains that are worried about shipping expensive cargoes. They don't want to be responsible for it if it's lost. So when a war zone happens, like there's no when a war starts up and ships start getting dangerously close to minefields and hostile navies and things like that, insurance companies don't want to touch shipping with a 10-foot pole in areas like that. And that was one of the big problems at the beginning of the war, because if you don't do insurance on this kind of shipping, you do sovereign indemnity, which means that the nation X is essentially insuring this cargo out of the back of their pocket. So like Russian oil that's being shipped to India probably has, if it doesn't have Russian or Indian insurance on it, it basically has a Russian or Indian sovereign indemnity on it. So basically one of those two countries is guaranteeing that shipment is going to make it to its destination, which, the first time someone hijacks one of those shipments, that's a big hole in somebody's pocket, instead of, gaining, a couple $100,000 or $1 million in that 10, 15, 20% tax revenue on the sale, they're going under, 20 million in the opposite direction, or whatever the cargo's worth. Who knows? It's different for grain, but points out, the point here is Ukraine, no one's going to want to insure this shipping out of Ukraine, and nobody is going to want to insure Russian shipping out of Novorossiysk if Ukraine starts hitting them with naval drones. All right, so moving along, we actually are going to also talk about Gaza in this. If you don't remember from the beginning, this is going to be somewhat long video, but that is okay. Maybe I'll try to put time stamps in it so you guys can skip through it, and I'll play this message at the beginning so you know. I can manage a little bit of editing on my own, I think. All right, so Israel. Let's get rid of all this crap here. Pretty big news here. Last time we talked, the IDF was sitting basically on the doorsteps of the Al Shifa hospital, and they were driving this pincer for an envelopment of the city. They have achieved that now. It happened kind of in two separate pushes, and I think it's actually more valuable. There's more utility in turning on all the labels here, so we can see where we are. But first thing that happened was the Israelis actually surrounded the Shifa hospital and didn't go in. So they cut around it. They used the back streets. They cut around it and they put a circle around it. And then they captured basically all of this territory down here, which was close to the sea. And then the next thing they did, once they had created a good buffer around the hospital, they decided to go into the hospital, clear it out, where they made claims that, the claim the whole time has been that the IDF is saying that Hamas has been using the hospital as a base of operations. But I haven't been watching the news today. I caught this information from the online reports, so I'm still waiting on seeing actual evidence of that, which I'm not claiming. I'm not saying I'm skeptical or whether or not it exists. I'm just saying I haven't seen the evidence. I'm just waiting for that. So the hospital, one of the largest still operating hospitals in Gaza. There were some 600 patients there before the Israelis stormed the building. So it will be interesting to find out what the final story was there, and if it was a disaster, if there's a lot of casualties, or if Hamas had abandoned it. So the other big news here, and something that the IDF has been saying, Israeli Defense Forces, they're basically claiming that they've already defeated Hamas. It's kind of strange claims because there's definitely still fighting going on, but it's more or less, I guess, I'm paraphrasing, but they've defanged Hamas, or essentially what they're saying is they've destroyed a lot of weapons caches. They've destroyed a lot of troop concentrations through their bombing campaigns, and the situation, basically the gist of it is the situation inside of Gaza is such a catastrophe that the people are starting to turn on Hamas. So they're losing power with the Palestinian people within Gaza. I'm not saying that's the truth of anything. I'm saying that that's the claim right now. I mean, in every war, there's all kinds of optimistic claims made. I think the IDF still has a pretty big fight ahead of them to secure the rest of Gaza, and I'm positive that they're not talking about the rest of the Gaza Strip. I mean, Hamas has pretty secure control over this. Outside of some bombing raids, the IDF hasn't even entered the southern part of the Strip yet. So, but in terms of the city of Gaza itself, I'm actually quite surprised with the rate of advance for the Israeli military. It's been very rapid, and previously I had compared this to Mariupol, because it seems like in the pro-Russian Telegram sphere, for some reason, I mean, I'm sure it's just taking the opposite anti-American view. I don't think the Russians actually care about the Palestinians, but they have taken the Palestinian side, and a lot of these pro-Russian Telegram channels. You're seeing a lot of. I mean, the IDF is taking pretty heavy losses. Don't get me wrong, but for how you take your heaviest losses during sustained combat. So like the Russians and Ukrainians have been fighting every day all over 1,000-kilometer front line for nearly 2 years now. At this point, it'll be 2 years in 3 months, right? So what is that? We're looking at 21 months now of sustained combat. Both sides have taken an absolute load of casualties. If if the IDF ends up capturing Gaza, inside of a month and a half, like, I'm going to be hard pressed to believe that they really took on real heavy casualties. And honestly, and I mean real heavy casualties is in the upper tens of thousands. Or even the low tens of thousands, really. But even compared to Mariupol, this battle's not going to last as long as Mariupol. There's just so much more going on here. There's just nothing in the way of the IDF. I mean, they're mopping it up right now. So whether it's the bombings really did a lot in softening some of these areas up. I don't know. I would have expected that this would be moving a lot slower based on the presence of civilians. But, I mean, arguably, we don't really know how many civilians managed to actually make it south of the creek of the line, which is, right down through here. So potentially the city is a lot more depopulated than we assumed. I don't know how many people were there, obviously, but I don't know. So, interesting thing, and I think we actually can go back to X for this as well, concerning Iran in the Middle East. This I thought was very fascinating. So I've talked several times, and this, somewhat, goes against what I've been saying, but also somewhat, there's still a possibility. I hope to God that I'm wrong about what I've said about this, but as it says, Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei delivered a clear message to Hamas leader Ismail Hyena. I don't know how to say your name, bro. When they met in Tehran in early November, 3 senior officials told Reuters, "You gave us no warning of your October 7th attack on Israel, and we will not enter the war on your behalf." Khamenei told Ismail that Iran would continue to lend the group its political and moral support, but wouldn't intervene directly. He also pressed Hyena, I really don't know how to say that, but it's a funny looking name, to silence those voices in the Palestinian group publicly for calling Iran and its powerful Lebanese ally Hezbollah to join the battle against Israel in full force. So basically, Iran is saying, hell no, we're not coming to your rescue. We're not going to independently enter into this war. And they're also saying, you did it without, our consent, permission, notifying us. And they're saying that they want Hamas to stop trying to draw Hezbollah in, basically. Stop calling on them to enter the country. So they're saying, they want nothing to do with it, blah, 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 blah. These are just statements made by the Iranian government. Whether they're true or not, I don't know. They're certainly fascinating public statements saying, because, people in Iran could gain access to these statements as well. So they're publicly declaring to all the people throughout the Middle East that they're not going to be the ones to jump in on Hamas's side, and they don't want Hezbollah to be the ones to jump in on Hamas's side either. So, pretty significant. That doesn't mean that Hezbollah won't still be drawn in, because Hezbollah and Iran are two different entities. Although Iran provides funding to Hezbollah, Iran also provides funding to Hamas. Iran is Shiite, Hezbollah is Shiite, Hamas is Sunni. let me tell you, Iran doesn't give a shit about Hamas. You know, they hate Israel, so that's why they give Hamas money. But you know, there's a religious battle every bit as toxic, I guess you can say, going on there. So yeah, very, very fascinating post. So hopefully I was wrong, and you know, Iran doesn't get involved, but you can never be too sure. All right, so here we go. Speaking of which, we got Joe Biden showing up here. I think this one is best actually on the Telegram. I'm gonna pull up the Telegram channel. Those of you guys don't know, I use Telegram as basically a depository for information. When I go to make my Frontline updates, I put together, information from, I'll look at American intelligence reports, British intelligence reports. I look at what the Ukrainians are saying. I look at what the Russians are saying. You know, you have to get every side of it to get, a good view of what's going on. Because I mean, all four of those entities lie out their ass about everything. So, you have to look at the underlying facts and measure them all against each other. But a lot of the Russian stuff is, not as present on the traditional platforms like Twitter, where I get a lot of the pro-Ukrainian information from. So I've always used Telegram for these things, but it kind of created a hostile environment on Telegram, because basically it's my depository for all the Russian information. It looks like just a pro-Russian channel if you're going to look at it. But that's just because I don't have time to search Telegram for the Ukrainian stuff that I'm already seeing on Twitter. Anyways, the comment section was vile, and I am starting to do something about it. So those of you that left the Telegram base, because it was hostile, consider coming back. We're making changes. So this is actually, it's really weird. I think you guys will like this. Let me get on here, and I guess I didn't even realize I've had this shitty background music going the whole time. I apologize. It's been 47 minutes. So hopefully some of you enjoyed it. All right, let's get rid of that. And let's share the proper screen. Window. There we go. All right. So before I get into this is the background story. So Xi Jinping, the president of China, has actually visited America. He visited San Francisco, and he met with Joe Biden earlier today. Yeah. Or by the time you guys see this, it'll be yesterday. Or was it? I don't know. In the last 48 hours from when you see this, Xi Jinping would have visited America and saw Joe Biden. And there's a lot of, I mean, I can easily dive into some hilarious like culture war stuff here, but like San Francisco is just dirty as shit, right? And it's homeless people everywhere, but they cleaned it all up for Xi Jinping. You got to make sure it looks great. For the Chinese president. It doesn't look great for the average Californians, but for Xi Jinping, they'll do it. So, they met, and there's some initial like positive reactions from this. Basically, and I guess I should probably show you guys some of the news articles first. Let's go here and see if I could. There we go. So, Biden Xi emerged from hours of talks, agreed to curb illicit fentanyl and restart military dialogue. So this is a. Actually, let's fix this for you guys so you can see. Make sure my big dumb head isn't in the way. So, this is ground news, and I swear to God, this is not an ad. I've been sponsored by them before, but they gave me a subscription for sponsoring them, and I use it, and it's actually pretty cool. But it's basically a news marketplace, and it's just put together. These are all the different articles written, and this is their summary of it. U.S. President Joe Biden and Chinese leader Xi Jinping met in California and agreed to resume military-to-military communications and cooperate on anti-drug policies. So that's probably the biggest takeaway, is that a lot of fentanyl comes into America via China, or maybe it's a lot of ingredients or the equipment that it's cooked up with, whatever it be. China is deeply involved in that. So the Joe Biden wants the fentanyl to stop coming in, which is really big among conservative voters. And then the military specifically wants to start talking to the Chinese military again, because, really, neither side actually wants a confrontation. So that's probably for the best. There is a number of other things that were brought up. This is great. So in terms of all right, the outcome of this, very mixed reviews, unknown. I think there's a little bit more to this meeting. First of all, I see a lot of people, in the depths of the internet simping real hard for Xi Jinping, but I don't. He doesn't come off to me as anything more than a dude in a suit. I really don't think he just. I don't know. Listen, I'm saying this when we have Joe Biden, but still, I don't think Xi Jinping has any control over whether this relationship restarts or not. I think the gears are already turning on it. But if we can make some agreements with China to keep our distance from each other and talk to each other, so we don't actually so our planes don't run into each other and stuff like that, then that would probably be for the best. And then of course, a lot of establishment government officials, whether they be Democrats or Republicans, want trade to resume, because a lot of American corporations that grease the DC gravy train, make a lot of money in China. So these guys are all incentivized to bring China back to the trade table. But right after, quite literally in the press conference, after these two sat in a room and talked for 4 hours, they both came out and they were like, "Oh, it was great." And then during Joe Biden's interview, he literally called Xi a dictator, which this headline actually paints that rather favorably. Kind of Biden, is talking shit, but really when you read the actual quote, it's more or less like a gaffe, So, President Biden called Chinese President Xi Jinping a dictator Wednesday after meeting with Xi for about 4 hours near San Francisco, after Xi warned Biden that the U.S. Turning its back on China was not an option. And then the quote is, "Well, look, he is, come on, man, he is a dictator in the sense that he is the guy who runs the country that is a communist country that is based on a form of government different from ours." What? He is the dictator in the sense that he is the guy who runs the country that is a communist country that is based on a form of government different than ours. So I don't know, he's trying to soften it and say, and in the Biden way, and say oh, well, China dictators are acceptable. I don't know, calling him, you're either a dictator or you're not. I don't know why he's dancing around it. But it apparently just kind of slipped out in conversation, because he said a lot of positive things about it and was oh, he's a great guy and all this stuff. And let's see here. I actually have some video Go play you guys. And at this point, I think I was trying to keep this to like 45 minutes, but I mean, once it hit 40 minutes, I was just like, well, all the people that can't watch longer than 5 minutes already dropped out a long time ago anyway, so I might as well keep going. All right. Make sure the audio is good here. Oh, I don't know why it's not. I don't know why it's not showing. Okay, there we go. I need to do entire screen. All right, so watch Blinken right here. This is so funny. I love how he says that face to face, and Blinken's like, it's ridiculous. It's crazy. He's just staring at him the whole time. People online were saying basically that like Blinken was like staring him down hard to make sure he didn't deviate from his little script that he has here. But I mean, in terms of Biden speech mistakes, this is nothing burger. It's just kind of funny. But yeah, all right, guys, that's it from me today. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. I know this is a long video and not many of you are still here now, but all the likes and subs definitely help. There will be podcasts coming out over the weekend, so stay on the lookout for those. Check those out. I want to wish everyone a happy start to their holiday season, and I think that's about it. Until next time.